Hey everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com back again with another edition of Monday Night Raw Graded. Now obviously this was a very serious and sad edition of Monday Night Raw for obvious reasons that we'll get to in a second, but I'm sure you know about already. But all that aside, you know, the show must go on. I'm sure that's how everyone in WWE would want us to see it as well. So we are going to look at everything else that happened on Raw and grade every segment and all the rest of it because, you know, as sad as this show was, there was still a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss beyond the whole Roman Reigns thing. So let's get into it and let's take a look at everything that happened on Monday Night Raw. This is Graded. So we start things off, of course, with Roman Reigns' very heartfelt, very sad, very touching opening promo where, as I'm sure you've heard by now, he revealed that he is suffering from leukemia and is taking time off to concentrate on his health and his family. And of course, we wish him all the very best and a full recovery, hopefully. But he did vacate the Universal Championship and really got Raw off to a very, very somber start. It was one of the strangest and most touching things I've ever seen in wrestling, ever at all. I'm not going to give it a grade because how can you grade something like that really, but he did at the end of the segment walk to the top of the ramp, meet Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins there. They all hugged and then they did the Shield, you know, fist like salute and went to the back, and it was just an astonishing and sad and somber and sincere start to Raw. It was weird, it was so strange and so jarring really, and so shocking. But we moved on to the first match of the night, which, well, the guys were in a really tough spot, weren't they, to be fair? How can you follow something like that? Especially with the crowd all sort of deflated a little bit, understandably, by the opening segment. But we had Finn Balor versus Bobby Lashley, accompanied, of course, by his mouthpiece and manager, Lio Rush. And once again, these two guys were in a very difficult spot, but you know what? Credit to them, they worked an alright match. You know, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was quite smooth. You can tell there's some semblance of chemistry there between the two of them. The crowd gradually got into it more and more as Finn Balor made his babyface comeback. But then, in the end, Finn Balor won clean with a roll-up. Now, that's a bit of a strange one for me, and I'll explain why now. I'm going to give this a B-. I thought it was perfectly fine, but my thinking here is, why on earth did Bobby Lashley lose clean so soon after his heel turn? He seemed to be on a roll, he seemed to be picking up steam. It looked as though at some point in the future he was going to get some sort of title shot, or maybe pick up a secondary title or something like that, but instead he sort of lost clean straight away to Finn Balor, and I don't know whether this is because they just couldn't have a heel victory straight after the Roman Reigns thing. They had to have a nice feel-good moment. I don't know if it was because of that, but if it was because of that, surely they would have just shuffled the show around a little bit and had a different match there instead, where maybe the plan was to have Finn Balor win all along, but I can't quite work out why. I'm assuming this is going to lead to a rematch where Bobby Lashley will, you know, crush Finn Balor into dust. But it was a good win for Finn, to be fair. He's a man who deserves to be higher on the card than he is, so mixed feelings on this opening match. Next up, Ruby Riott versus Sasha Banks. Sasha was accompanied by Bayley and Natalya, who is now part of their sort of super friends trio kind of thing going on. I guess that's fair enough. And on the other side, we had Ruby Riott, accompanied, of course, by Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan, the Riott Squad. Again, this match was a pretty good one. I think I enjoyed the action a little bit more than the opening match. I think that Sasha Banks in particular looked sharp. She looked on her game once again, which again emphasised the fact that she's nowhere near the top of the card in the women's division, which is a little bit strange. But her and Ruby Riott put on a good match, and then it all kind of broke down towards the end when the Riott Squad tried to get involved. Natalya and Bayley kind of fought them off, and it all broke down a little bit. Sasha ended up on the outside. She knocked out two members of the Riott Squad with just big right hands. Got back in the ring, and then was caught with the Riott kick by Ruby Riott, who picked up the big victory. Now, I was going to give this maybe like a B or something, because I did enjoy watching the match, but again, I'm going to repeat what I did in the last segment and give this a B- as well, just because it's once again a reminder of a match at Evolution that really isn't sitting well with me. I think that a lot of people involved in this match deserve to be treated much better than they are by the booking team, particularly, of course, Sasha and Bayley, who are two of the best around. Two of the best women's wrestlers in the world, and it's easy to forget that, because it's easy to forget, for example, that only a few years ago in Brooklyn they put on one of the best women's matches ever, now that they're sort of just slumming it in the undercard on Monday Night Raw week in and week out, and it's just a little bit... To me, it all links back to when Kurt Angle made them go to counselling. Why didn't they just feud? Maybe they're holding it off until Mania, perhaps? I genuinely don't know, but yeah, this just sort of reminded me that the Evolution card isn't quite as looking as strong as we maybe hoped at this stage, and this is certainly one of the matches that I'm least excited for, and given the talent involved, that shouldn't be the case, but it is. So, B-, yeah. Next up, break it down, Na, 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 na. We got DX, D-Generation X came to the ring to break it down. Triple H and Shawn Michaels, the lads. Well, the dads. They came in the ring and did, like, to be fair, they're both really good at getting the crowd hyped up, aren't they? They're bloody DX, for God's sake. But DX said there's a lot of big words being thrown around recently, and one of those is nostalgia, which is obviously relating to their feud with the Brothers of Destruction. Now, Shawn Michaels had a line here that really, to use a bit of wrestler slang, really popped me. Gave me a right old chuckle, it did, haha. Michael said that he thought that maybe nostalgia was an ancient Greek word that meant new merch, but then he realised no it wasn't, and he learned the true meaning of nostalgia. But that new merch bit, oh, I thought that was pretty good, because obviously DX do love bringing out new merch. It's just something they love to do. In fact, WWE as a whole loves merch. Cultaholic loves merch as well, and if you go to our shop section at cultaholic.com, you'll find a new t-shirt there. It says Wrestler of the Week on it. That's my show. Michaels and Triple H pointed out that, you know what, sometimes older isn't necessarily worse. Sometimes older is better. For example, there's a remake of the old Halloween franchise out at the minute, and it's #1 at the box office. For example as well, they drew 70,000 people to Super Showdown in Australia for that Triple H versus Undertaker main event. So I kind of see their logic. I like the fact that they've embraced the criticism. They've embraced the fact that everyone's calling them old and past it, and they've decided to roll with it. If anyone can roll with the punches like that, it's D-Generation X. They said if you're not down for that, they've got 2 words for you. They're about to tell us to suck it, but instead they were cut off by Kane and The Undertaker, who appeared not on the stage on the Tron. They pre-recorded a thing because Undertaker's, you know, doesn't appear that much, and Kane's off being a literal politician somewhere. Now, the Brothers of Destruction were in a graveyard next to a couple of tombstones that said Triple H and Shawn Michaels on them, and said this is going to be your last match ever. Not just your return from retirement, Michaels, not just your next match, Triple H, it's going to be your last matches ever. I was like, are they going to murder them? Is that what they're saying right now? I didn't know really what to grade this. I think I'll give it a B because I love DX's bit. I thought they did really, really well in this segment. I thought that Triple H and Shawn were both on top of their game. They were both funny, entertaining, got the crowd behind them. But I didn't enjoy the Brothers of Destruction's bit because it's hard to take Undertaker seriously, and he says he's going to bury his opponents when he looked so struggling and so in need of help at that Australia show. So yeah, I didn't buy into the Brothers of Destruction's bit really at all. I know they're big, scary men still, but we've just seen Triple H basically have to help Undertaker through a main event at Super Showdown. But I love DX's bit, so I'm giving it a B on balance, and I think that's fair. Next up, we had Paul Heyman, who, if you're in a difficult spot on a show, or if something's happened that's really made everything serious, and you need someone to really control the tone, get the crowd hyped while still paying respect to the serious thing that's happened, Paul Heyman is the best in the world at that. Heyman came out and understandably looked pretty emotional because of the whole Roman Reigns thing, paid massive respect and massive tribute to Roman Reigns, and said, you know what? Roman Reigns is the best, and the Universal Championship represents the best, and now that he's vacated it, we need someone else who is the best to carry on his sort of example that he's set. And you'll never guess who Heyman had prepared to say was the best. It was his pal Brock Lesnar, of course it bloody was. So this was the reveal that the Crown Jewel match is no longer going to be a triple threat, it's just going to be a straight singles match between Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman for the vacant Universal Championship, and Paul Heyman guaranteed everyone that Brock Lesnar was going to win, and this of course brought Braun Strowman to ringside. Strowman, who is now like fully babyface, got on the mic and said, right, this is the thing, Paul, I'm going to win that belt in Saudi Arabia, and I'm going to bring it back to Monday Night Raw, and then when I do so, I'm going to give Roman Reigns a title shot when he beats leukemia. And I was like, that's really fair play, Braun Strowman, if you do manage to beat Brock Lesnar, which is no mean feat, of course. But he said enough of that for now. All we need to worry about for the near future is that Brock Lesnar's going to get these hands. And then Strowman turned around and got a big foot right to the face by Drew McIntyre, who backstage had been plotting with Dolph Ziggler to take Braun Strowman out before their match later on tonight. I thought it was great. I thought Drew was fantastic, the way he ran down the ramp. The camera work was good, it didn't show him too early. We just sort of got a nice enough surprise, and then he leapt into that Claymore kick. Incredible athleticism and absolutely floored Braun Strowman. I'm going to give this an A. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. I thought it achieved multiple things. I thought that Heyman was excellent. I thought that Braun was great. I thought the attack by Drew was great. I thought it achieved multiple things. I thought it hyped the upcoming title match. It carried on the feud between Drew and Braun, and it gave a nice nod as well to Roman Reigns, all in the same little segment. Really well written stuff, and really well performed stuff too. Next up, we had Elias, who came out and was cut off yet again by the same man who cut him off last week, Apollo Crews. Now, this match was kind of slow and kind of plodding, and it wasn't terrible by any means. No one made any big mistakes or anything. It just didn't achieve much in my opinion. Elias won anyway with the drift away, and I'm going to give it a C- because Why bring in Apollo to really, you know, gorilla press Elias over his head and look really strong last week, only to get beaten clean by Elias this week? I guess the next segment we're going to talk about might explain that a little bit, but this little bit in itself, I don't think really was too helpful for Apollo Crews at all. So that's why I'm giving it a C-, unfortunately. Then we got a big backstage promo by Kurt Angle hyping the World Cup to determine the best wrestler in the world ever, forever. And then when we got back to ringside, Elias was now at the top of the ramp with his guitar still wanting to play a song, and he was cut off again, this time by Baron Corbin. Corbin was like, come on mate, I've got a show to run, come on, get off the stage. If Stephanie didn't like you so much, I'd have fired you myself. Great work by Corbin, being the sort of smug asshole GM that we know he can be. Then Elias started to sing a song about how Corbin is Stephanie McMahon's puppet, literally, because he said that she had her fist right up. Yep, it's something I regret doing with my hands there. And then Corbin was like, no, just get off stage. So Elias did, came back though, crept back up with the guitar in his hands, smashed Baron Corbin over the back like bloody Jeff Jarrett or something, and the crowd went wild. It was actually more like Stone Cold than Jeff Jarrett. Everyone lost their minds for this Elias babyface turn. I'm going to give this segment, I know I give the Apollo and Elias thing a C-. I'm going to give this a B+. I thought this was well exciting. Delighted to see Elias finally turn face. I think that the crowd are already pretty much 90% behind him. It's just when he like berates the hometown crowd for like their sports team being rubbish or whatever. But apart from that, the crowd love Elias, and now that he's got a chance to really get them on side, hopefully this momentum continues and carries him forwards. Next up, we had Michael Cole hosting the contract signing for the Raw Women's Championship match at Evolution on Sunday. So the Bellas and Ronda came to the ring, and as soon as Ronda actually arrived to ringside, the Bellas bailed out the other side of the ring. They wanted no part of Ronda Rousey because she's really dangerous, and that's really good. I like that they were selling the fear of her, or at least the wariness. Ronda said, don't worry, I'm not going to lay a hand on you this week, I promise. And Nikki Bella took that as, well, then I can say whatever I want. And Ronda said, well, it doesn't really matter because I could beat both of you with my hands tied behind my back or something like that. She said I could beat up both of you, and if I couldn't, then I think my mother would be ashamed of me. And then Nikki said, I feel like I'm reporting something that's happened on the playground. You'll never guess what happened next. And then Nikki said this. Then Nikki said, Ronda, didn't you promise your mother that you would be undefeated in the octagon and then you got knocked out? I think your mother's already ashamed of you. And whoa, Ronda didn't take too kindly to that, but she didn't react. She just signed the contract, and then Nikki slapped her in the face, and Ronda went, okay, I'm all right, and laughed it off. And everyone was like, oh, she's laughing it off. That's a bit strange. Then she grabbed the mic and went, I'm going to end you, and then left the ring. And I thought, you know what, that is pretty badass. I quite liked it. I'm going to give this a B+. I would have actually given it higher, but I think the mother stuff was just sort of shoehorned in a little bit. And I think that often women's feuds in WWE tend to rely too much on personal attacks and that sort of thing to get cheap heat, whereas the men's storylines sometimes tend to be a little bit more, you know, three-dimensional, whereas the women's ones tend to just be a bit more, your mum's this, your boyfriend's this, or whatever. I'd like to see a little bit more of a balance in terms of personal versus actually kind of well-written storylines, or at least personal with some depth to it, rather than just your mother's ashamed of you, like. But at the same time, I thought Ronda was excellent here, and I thought that the reaction of the Bellas was excellent as well. They showed real fear of Ronda, and it did get me more excited for the match on Sunday, so it did its job in that respect, B+. Next up, Nia Jax versus Dana Brooke versus Ember Moon versus Tamina. Ooh, this was short. This was, I think, under 2 minutes long. Everyone kind of got some moves in really quickly, and then Ember Moon won with the Eclipse on Tamina. And there's not really much more to report with this match. I'm going to give this a D because this was really a throwback. This felt like we'd stepped back in time to the pre-Women's Revolution era, where like often the women's division were just kind of lumped into multi-woman matches that got about 2 minutes each and didn't really achieve anything of note and weren't built on any sort of storyline. This one does have a bit of a storyline. It's to hype the Battle Royal match at Evolution, but that is like a really paper-thin storyline and not a match that I'm really looking forward to, in my opinion at least anyway, and I'm sure a lot of you probably agree with that. It's not gone down well online, that match in particular. I would have given it a lower grade, but I didn't, because I think that Ember Moon won, which is great because I think she's the one with the most promise in the match, and also her Eclipse looked really nice. She had a really good one, a particularly smooth Eclipse on Tamina. So that's why it gets a D. Could have got lower. Just wasn't really impressed with the booking, to be honest. Next up, we got Lita and Trish Stratus being interviewed backstage about their tag team match against Alexa Bliss and Mickie James on Sunday. So the veterans are talking about how they've got the edge and they're going to win and they're feeling really confident, and then they got jumped by Mickie James and Alicia Fox, who was wearing the biggest heels I've ever... they were like hindering her performance in this assault. She was running around trying not to fall over and like laying in a few blows and then nearly falling, and it was all a bit, whoa. I was really impressed by her ability actually to wear those and just sort of function in them like a human, because I certainly couldn't. I don't have great experience in wearing heels, to be honest with you. So the heels got the upper hand. Mickie and Alicia Fox were beating down the babyfaces, but then the veterans rallied and fought them off and said, that's how we do in the Attitude Era. We're going to win on Sunday. And Alexa Bliss was nowhere to be seen. I don't know what to grade this. I'm going to give it that little question mark grade that I give things sometimes, because honestly, I just don't... There's rumours, right, that Alexa Bliss is injured and got injured, I think, at a house show this past weekend. That's what the rumours seem to suggest anyway. No idea if it's true or false, but if it is, then they're a little bit in trouble, because a lot of this whole feud was built around Alexa Bliss's excellent mic work. Everyone would probably like to see Trish and Lita versus Alexa and Mickie, but maybe not so much if Alexa subbed out for Alicia Fox, who really hasn't had much of a part in this feud beyond hanging around at ringside. So this could be really tricky for WWE if Alexa is indeed injured. Then we had the main event of the night, the Raw Tag Team Championship match between Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, the champions, and the challengers, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. And I thought, wow, WWE may have sort of painted themselves into a corner here with the booking, because previously in the night, Seth and Dean were backstage saying they were going to win this match for Roman, guaranteed. And I thought, well then they can't not win then, can they? Because that's just too disheartening if they don't. Now we've obviously seen a lot of variations of this match beforehand with the same four guys all mixing it up in various combinations, so usually it wouldn't have felt fresh, but it did feel fresh because of the whole emotional Roman Reigns angle to it, which meant the crowd were so behind the Shield. It really freshened up this match. The ending came as the match ended its closing stages, where Braun Strowman's music hit and he hit the ring to get revenge on Drew McIntyre for Claymore kicking him earlier on in the night. The referee was bumped around this time as well, so basically Braun took Drew out of the match and they brawled through the crowd. I say brawled, it was quite one-sided. Braun just punched Drew through the crowd a lot until they got out of view. This left Dolph Ziggler 2-on-1 against both members of the Shield. He grabbed one of the title belts at ringside to use while the referee was still down, but Dean Ambrose snagged it off him. They had a bit of a tug of war. Ziggler recoiled back into the ring and got hit with a stomp. The referee recovered, and we have new Raw Tag Team Champions Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. I'm going to give this match an A. I thought it was decent. It was a good match, certainly, but I thought the thing that really pushed it over the top was the whole emotional backdrop to it. It was really good stuff. The crowd was so hot for the babyfaces to win, and then that wasn't the end of the show because something else happened, and I'm going to talk about it now, and I don't know what to say about it because it's tricky. So Seth and Dean were celebrating in the ring, and then Dean Ambrose kicked Seth Rollins in the gut and hit him with dirty deeds. Then Dean kind of freaked out as if to be like, what have I done? I can't believe I've done this. He was like biting his own fist. And then he thought, no, I'm going for this full on. Threw Seth Rollins out the ring, ripped up some mats at ringside, hit him with dirty deeds again on the exposed arena floor, and just took his shirt off, took his vest off, and walked through the crowd, and everyone was just hating on him. And Seth Rollins sold this wonderfully. Like, he didn't just look in physical pain, he was emotionally crushed as well, and you could tell from the close-up that this was top-notch acting. But I don't know what on earth to grade it, because there's already a debate online whether this came too soon. Is it too soon to turn one of Roman Reigns' closest allies heel after such an emotional speech at the start of the show, and Dean Ambrose was present for the end of that segment, giving Roman a hug and giving Rollins a hug as well? Is it all a bit too soon, really, for that heel turn to happen? I'm going to just try and look at this without taking that whole debate into account too much, because honestly, there's arguments for both sides of it, and it's a really complex one, and I don't really want to fall on one side or the other, because I don't even know personally yet, in my own head, whether it was a good idea or not. But just as a piece of storytelling, I'm going to give this an A, because it was effective, and both Dean and Seth played it to absolute perfection. Dean looked conflicted, he didn't look like too sure about this. This wasn't really like when Rollins broke up the Shield. This was more of a less calculated thing. It was just like Dean's lunatic side had taken over and he finally had enough, and I'm sure we'll learn his justification of it next week, but he played this to perfection, as did Seth Rollins, who sold everything wonderfully, both physically and emotionally too. It was a really good heel turn, and I do think it deserves the A grade, but the timing is a little bit controversial, I will admit. So where do we go from there with the overall grade? Because this was one of the most eventful Raws I can remember in a hell of a long time, and that would even have been without the whole emotional, serious Roman Reigns stuff at the start. I'm going to give this Raw a B+. One of the stronger Raws I can remember in quite some time as well. I think that the Roman stuff aside, it was still a very entertaining show, but obviously it had that shadow over it because of the really serious and sad news. But the whole roster credits to them really pulled together to put on a show. That main event was superb. The heel turn was superb. The circumstances around it are a little bit controversial. There was some weak stuff on the show as well. You know, I don't think the women's matches really got enough time or clever enough writing this week. And I don't know whether Bobby Lashley sort of lost so soon after turning heel. But on the whole, man, I couldn't take my eyes off this Raw. For better or for worse, I think a lot of stuff happened, and it was quite enthralling at times. Again, for better or for worse. A tricky one to grade, but I think we're going to settle for a B+. So that's it for this week's Monday Night Raw Graded. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to, you can follow me on Twitter at JackTheJobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic, and check out our Patreon too if you want. Patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, to join us.